So with a couple of wide receivers being traded yesterday, there's a bit of urgency for the Chiefs, who definitely need wide receiver help to make a trade of their own. Well, in today's video, I break down two of my favorite options that are actually pretty realistic possibilities. So I gotta break that down along with all the craziness that's happened over the last couple of days. But first, how about those? All right, first up, there were a couple of big moves made yesterday that are worth discussing because the Chiefs are definitely in the market for a receiver before the trade deadline, at least I really hope so, and two of these guys are now officially off the board. Davante Adams is now a New York Packer, or a Green Bay Jet, however you want to phrase the team these days, because Davante has officially joined longtime teammate Aaron Rodgers, who has somehow managed to build a roster around several former Green Bay teammates. The Jets have shown they are all in this season with the trade being made, even though they are 2-4. Well, when you have a 40-year-old quarterback that you gave up so much for to acquire, the all-in mindset definitely makes sense for them. Anyway, the Raiders traded Adams away, and what they got out of him was a third-round pick that could become a second-round pick if Davante earns first or second team All-Pro this season, or he's on the Jets active roster for the AFC Championship or Super Bowl. So basically, the Raiders are never getting a second-round pick out of this. After the trade happened, New York and Adams agreed to a contract restructure as well that lowered his cap hit for 2024, which I believe will make it less than the $11.59 million owed this year. Adams has no guaranteed money in 2025 or 2026, though, so this very well could be a half-year loaner type of trade, depending on how it all plays out. Ultimately, I'm happy for Davante. I mean, he's wanted out of Vegas since his buddy Derek Carr moved on to the Saints, and now he gets to be back with another buddy to return and play with Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to give things one last final hurrah. I'm not sure how that's going to actually play out by season's end. If they will be successful, I highly doubt it, but I'm sure he's going to enjoy the rest of the season with Aaron Rodgers, at least way more than he was going to as a Raider. Speaking of the Raiders, Tom Brady was officially approved by NFL owners as a limited partner of that franchise yesterday. He's got a 5% stake, but a total purchase of 10% by Brady and his partner. And that officially means he cannot return to play the sport of football, which we all knew because this guy is nearing 50 years old, for crying out loud. Now, this also puts him in an interesting position as a broadcaster with Fox. Look at this. Now that he's a minority owner, Brady isn't permitted to be in another team's facility. He can't watch the practices, can't attend broadcast production meetings virtually or in person, can't publicly criticize the refs, is subject to the league's gambling and anti-tampering policy. So the guy signs a 10-year, $375 million deal with Fox, then used some of that money to disqualify himself from doing parts of his job, and now makes even more money by doing less. As Travis says here in this tweet, this man really is a genius. I mean, I won't lie, this is kind of insane that Brady got approved given his contract with Fox, considering all the limitations he now has, but it is what it is. Brady is also set to call his first Chiefs game this Sunday against the 49ers during the main midday slot on Fox, so that should be fun. At least I think it'll be. Next up, the Raiders weren't the only team dealing receivers yesterday, because after the Davante Adams trade was announced, the Browns also traded away one of their receivers to the Buffalo Taliban. That's right, Sean McKnight-11 gets another weapon for Josh Allen. Meanwhile, the Chiefs could see a very familiar face return because of it. So I've got to dive into that, as well as a couple wide receiver trades I hope the Chiefs try to make. But before I do, with the NFL season nearing its midway point, some of you still haven't been to a game, myself included, but that's where the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, and my special hookup with them comes right in. You can use my code HBTC10 to get 10% off any tickets on SeatGeek, whether you are a new customer or not. And this offer applies to any NFL game out there, as well as other sports like NBA, MLS, concerts, festivals, you name it. Code HBTC10 is gonna get it done. I'll be using SeatGeek to get my tickets for the Chiefs and Broncos matchup on November 10th, so make sure to grab some tickets as well if you want to meet me out there. SeatGeek makes this process very easy, by the way, rating tickets on a scale of 1 to 10, so just look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. So hey, take out your phone, open up the SeatGeek app, and add code HBTC10 to your account now ASAP because this offer is only available for a limited time. Lastly, it doesn't matter how many times you've bought tickets using SeatGeek before because code HBTC10 is going to get you 10% off your next order regardless. All right, former Browns wide receiver Amari Cooper joined the Buffalo Bills yesterday and is only going to cost them around $800,000. To get him though, Buffalo had to give Cleveland a 2025 third-round pick as well as a late-round pick swap. And all jokes aside here about Sean McKnight-11 and all that, this is a great addition for the Bills, who are very much still in playoff contention, but needed another receiving threat out there. Keon Coleman is coming along, but Curtis Samuel and MVS weren't doing much at all. And I know Chiefs fans wanted Amari Cooper to come to KC, but the price to get him seemed a little steep, and I really don't think Brett Veach wanted to give up a third-round pick for the guy, and I don't even know if they were in conversation at all to get him in the first place. Now, what Brett Veach will most likely do, since the Bills have Amari Cooper, is sign Marquez Valdes-Scantling, because to make room for Amari Cooper on the roster, the Bills actually released MVS, who through 6 weeks has only caught 2 passes for 26 yards, and since he is a vested vet, he doesn't have to clear waivers and is now free to sign with any team, and this would be a very on-brand move for Brett Veach because this is obviously a former player who knows the system so well that he can play all 3 wide receiver positions. The Chiefs are down there wide receiver 1 and 2 with season-ending injuries, and they cannot trust Sky Moore to even catch a cold, let alone a pass on third down. So the reason why I feel like an MVS return is basically inevitable at this point is because he's going to cost you no draft capital. Again, knows the system, will be a vet min signing, and you could probably trust MVS to make a play more so than you can trust Sky Moore. I know that is a very low bar, but it is the sad reality that the Chiefs live in with their wide receiver room at the moment, at least from a depth perspective. This signing, by the way, could maybe be to the active roster or even the practice squad. Either way, I still think the Chiefs will be actively trying to make a trade before the November 5th deadline, even if MVS is brought back. That is not enough, in my opinion. Yes, you've got Juju Smith-Schuster. He's coming off of a great game. But dude, just imagine if Juju gets hurt. I am terrified even thinking about that. And before I get to 2 of my favorite options that the Chiefs should trade for, I do want to say that if MVS for some reason is brought back and signed to the active roster, the Chiefs will have to waive or release somebody to make room for him because as of yesterday, the 52 players on the active roster became 53 when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was officially added back to the 53-man roster, brought back from the NFI list. He had his window to return open up, and he is officially back in action. They were basically saving that spot for him, and the roster is now full. So you now have 4 running backs: Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, Kareem Hunt, and now CEH. 5 wide receivers: Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman, and Sky Moore. And 4 tight ends: Jody Fortson, Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, and Travis Kelce on the roster at the moment. So it's a little weird from a skilled position perspective, a little bit less receivers, a little bit more on the tight end side, and then you've got 4 running backs. We'll see what happens here in the very near future. Do I think MVS should return? I mean, I don't really know. Probably not, but at this point, his return feels like it's almost a done deal, all things considered. Even if that does happen, I think the Chiefs should add another guy to the room, and there are 2 options I really like at the moment that they should hopefully maybe make a trade for before the deadline. All right, the first guy to talk about is Diontae Johnson of the Panthers. He's having a pretty good season with them so far, especially considering the inconsistency of quarterback play, and he's caught 29 passes for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns. And for context, that's more than any Chiefs pass catcher on the season. Of course, Rice would have had more by now, but he's done for the season, and that's why we're even talking about wide receivers to begin with. One thing that is intriguing about Diontae Johnson as well is that he leads the NFL with 11 end zone targets, and nobody else has more than 7. The Chiefs, meanwhile, are one of the worst teams at scoring touchdowns in the red zone, currently ranked 29th. So he would be a massive help down in that area, with another key reason, and this being one of the biggest reasons I say go get him, being his ability to create separation in his route running. If you look at this chart, the top right quadrant shows the receivers who face the most routes in single coverage, but the key is the higher they are in this upper right quadrant, it means the more separation they are creating when given those opportunities. Well, Diontae Johnson is right up there with the best of them. He's also only 28 years old. So under 30, which Brett Veach really likes / prefers. He's 5'10", 183 pounds, but it doesn't matter. Size does not matter for the Kansas City Chiefs, as we've seen time and time again with them bringing in smaller-bodied receivers. I mean, Mahomes is throwing to the open receiver almost every single time and is not forcing tight window throws or contested catches. That's just how it goes. So if you have somebody like Diontae able to get open in man coverage, that is what the Chiefs need more than anything else, with both Hollywood and Rashee out for the season. And that's why Ron Kopp Jr. of Arrowhead Pride says it's basically Diontae Johnson or bust on the trade market if you are looking for a man coverage beater who can win short to intermediate routes. Well, he is on the last year of his deal. The Panthers are 1-5 and may be looking to eventually trade him before the deadline. That's if the Panthers don't opt to keep him or try and extend him this offseason as a solid wide receiver 2 option for the next few years. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN hints at that in a recent article. However, they could also get a mid-round pick out of him, maybe a 4th or a 5th, which I think the Chiefs would be willing to give up, at least more willing to give up than a 3rd-round pick like the Bills just had to do for Amari Cooper. Johnson would cost the team around $3.7 million this year, though, if they get him around the trade deadline. And in order to afford him, you would have to restructure somebody because the Chiefs have under $5 million in available cap space. So who do you restructure? I don't know. Jawan Taylor is a name that comes to mind, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities, all things considered. Now, while some say it's Johnson or bust, big pause, what if I told you there's another option I really like as well? The second option also happens to be on the last year of his deal on a team that is not playing great and is in the upper right quadrant of this same graphic as Diontae Johnson and creating separation during their routes in single coverage. In fact, he's creating a bit more separation than Diontae, and that is Giants wideout Darius Slayton. Slayton has similar stats to Diontae, just 4 less catches for 40 less yards, 2 less touchdowns as well, but okay, he's getting targeted, he's getting yards, you know what I'm getting at, and he's around the same age, 27, compared to Johnson being 28. Slayton is a bit taller at 6'1" and heavier at nearly 200 pounds, also more athletic, running a 4.39 40. The only thing about Slayton at the moment is he was actually limited in practice today with a new groin injury, so that is less than ideal, and hopefully it's nothing serious, but let's say it's not serious, and let's say the Giants lose a couple more games and are willing to trade him. Could the Chiefs go and get him? Well, yes, they could. Like Johnson, you could probably get him for a 5th-round pick or so, and the cap hit would actually be less than Diontae's, maybe enough that you'd have to restructure somebody, but you could probably force it and not have to do that at all because it would be around $1.8 million if the Chiefs got him around the November 5th deadline. Some might argue that neither of these guys move the needle enough in the wide receiver room to make a move to go get him, but at this point, I think they do. There's limited options out there, and with 2 receivers out for the season that are clearly the best candidates for the Chiefs, sometimes you gotta go with what's available or settle for less and work with what you have. And I already talked about who the Chiefs have, so I do think Darius Slayton or Diontae Johnson are definitely 2 options, 2 of the best guys available, at least playing for teams that will consider trading them if their season continues to go this way. So yeah, I'm definitely in the camp of let's go get somebody that won't be extremely expensive or break the draft capital bank. There's other options out there as well. Mike Williams is potentially being shopped for a trade, though I have heard whispers that they do not want to trade him to an AFC contender if at all possible, unless they're offered something that blows their mind. The Chiefs could also explore somebody on a rookie deal, like I've talked about in a previous video, like Jalen Hyatt, another wide receiver on the Giants, 3rd-round pick. He's got a couple years left on his deal. Similar thing to how they went and got Kadarius Toney, so you could look at an option like that. But these are just 2 of my favorite options at this point in time, all things considered, talking about Darius Slayton and Diontae Johnson. But with that being said, do you guys like either of these options, Diontae or Darius Slayton, or would you prefer the Chiefs to make a move for somebody else entirely? If that's where you land right now, give me your thoughts on who they should go and get. Then maybe you are in the minority camp of, hey, just use who you got and save the picks for next year. They're going to figure it out as they chase the three-peat. Let me know where you stand on that either way in the comments down below. And then let's get into this Chiefs and 49ers injury report. So for the injuries, the 49ers are way more banged up than the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe today was an estimated report, I guess I didn't practice today, so it's estimated. We'll see. This is probably how they are going to be trending, though. So for those who didn't participate, Matthew Wright, Jake Moody, Jawan Jennings, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, who had a vet rest day, and then those limited, Jordan Elliott, Jordan Mason, Deebo Samuel, and then Malik Mustafa. And a couple of details on the 49ers and their injuries are as follows. Get this. So Deebo Samuel's dealing with a wrist that he banged up in the Seahawks game. And then running back Jordan Mason, he got banged up in that game as well, suffering an AC joint sprain in his left shoulder. He only played one play in the second half and sat out the rest of the game. Rookie safety Malik Mustafa has a low ankle sprain. Defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, he missed the last 2 games with a knee injury, but is trending towards playing Sunday. Another interior guy on the D-line, Malik Collins, is dealing with a knee injury as well and didn't practice. Then wide receiver Juwan Jennings, he's battling a hip issue, and that's kept him out of practice. Big loss if you're dealing with Deebo and Juwan Jennings banged up. And then first-round pick Ricky Pearsall's practice window opened up this week after sustaining that gunshot wound to the chest, which crazy story in and of itself. But yeah, he could return this week. We'll see if he's ready or not. Then get this. Neither of the 49ers kickers, Matthew Wright or Jake Moody, were expected to be involved in practice. Moody's return date from a high ankle sprain is unknown, and the 49ers will need to elevate the newly signed Anders Carlson from the practice squad if Wright is not healthy enough to kick. So the 49ers are definitely banged up, especially on the interior of the D-line, with Javon Hargrave also recently being placed on IR due to tearing his triceps. The Chiefs' injuries, meanwhile, are much more simple in comparison. Mike Dana was the only player that didn't practice. He sustained a pec injury of sorts in the game against the Saints. We'll see how bad it is, but he didn't practice today. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, McCole Hardman, and Derek Nottie were also on the injury report. CEH, he's coming back from the NFI list. McCole Hardman, knee. Derek Nottie, triceps. They were all full go at today's practice. So there you have it. Chiefs are looking relatively healthy, even though their star players are out on IR, so they're not popping up on the injury report. Meanwhile, the 49ers have quite a bit of guys on there. We'll do a full preview on Friday. So until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?